Hey, welcome to the next episode of the Connorcast. This is episode 3, and my guest is Manheim, who is the original drummer from the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem. When he left Mayhem, he went on to do a lot of noise projects, and he's currently playing in a band called O.R.T, which is an old school metal band, and it has Messiah, also from Mayhem, on vocals, and some previous Cadaver musicians. So without further ado, here's my interview with Manheim. So I am here with Manheim. He's the original drummer from Mayhem, and he is currently playing in O.R.T. How you doing, Manheim?
I'm fine, thank you.
So my first question is that you and Messiah worked together in Mayhem. You played drums, and Messiah sang a few tracks on the Death Crush EP. And just to show how that album stood the test of time, that album was recorded about 3 or 4 years before I was even born, and I listen to it now. So I was just wondering, how did creating O.R.T come about?
Oh, well, actually it was Anders Odden's idea. He currently plays with Satyricon, but he's the founder of Cadaver. And he had this idea because he talks a lot around with people who are interested in people like him and me and others, whether or not we're going to create something new. So we had this idea. I think he had actually talked about it, discussed it with people, and he sent me an email and asked me if I found the idea of him and René, which is the bassist from the old Cadaver. I don't know. Do you know Cadaver?
Yeah.
Yeah, people usually do. So René and him, and he had the idea of a Messiah and myself. And I get lack of judgment or whatever. I just said, yeah, why not? that could be an idea. So, and I haven't been, since Mayhem, I haven't really been into any band or metal. I've been more into avant-garde-ish project or noise projects, so more projects based, not the band thing. And but then it's turned out that Billy said the same, Messiah and René as well. So suddenly we were in the studio and playing old songs. It was great fun.
So it's interesting that it's kind of like a old Mayhem, old Cadaver kind of coming together. After the unfortunate passing of René, how did you guys find Stu Minks? If I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the plan, obviously. So and it kind of stopped things, and we didn't really know what to do other than that we thought we had a thing and it would be fun to make it happen, but without René, some of the structural history around the band was gone. But as the months went on, and Anders and I were talking about what we could do, and we're talking about the type of a bass player that could be not a stand-in or replacement as such, but more a member of the band, if you see the difference. We were thinking about Stu actually quite early, because Anders knew Stu from before. I didn't, but he said he was a really nice guy, and he had this way of playing his bass that would fit right in, and he has not the background from black metal, but it turned out really, really well, and it was just exactly what we needed. So the summer after René passed away, we had a new bass player, and order was reordered, so to speak. So that's how it came about.
So you said that Stu doesn't have a background in black metal. The music of O.R.T is a lot more groove and riff oriented, I'd say, than say Mayhem. That's obviously chaotic and crazy and all that. What are your guys' inspirations for O.R.T, and what are the goals of the band?
Well, that's a very good question, because we that was one of the things we asked ourselves right on the first rehearsal. because I didn't want to do a sort of reunion, the old guys go on road with their old songs type of thing. Yeah, not that could be, that could work, of course, but that's not what I wanted to do if I was going to spend time on it. If I'm going to spend time on something, I want it to be something creative and new. So and we discussed that a lot. And we're not a new wine, right? We're the old guys. So what we were trying to do is to look for something that we still had, which was like, well, we tried to express it like this: if we can give a taste of the past by making something new, we probably have something going. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make new stuff that we like, which is groovy, as you say, but it's also dark and slow, and goes back to some of the roots where we come from. And I think we have succeeded in that. At least that's what people say to us. They can hear something from the past, at the same time they find it rough and kind of new.
Just to kind of, I mentioned that Order has like a groove style, Mayhem has a chaotic style. As I was talking to my girlfriend, they said, hey, I'm going to have Manheim on the podcast. And he's playing in the band Order, and he used to play in Mayhem. And she went, oh, that's really clever. Was that naming the Order, was that intentional, or how did that come about?
Yeah, well, actually, I didn't think of it, and call me stupid, man, but I didn't see it. It was I have heard it, of course, afterwards. So no worries there. But I didn't think about it in that way. But it could be clever, yeah. But it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, I didn't get it until she said that. And I was like, oh, that'd be a good question.
Yeah. But it's, of course, it's fitting, and it probably will stick, right? Because people will obviously do the connection. But there's not really a connection between Mayhem and Order, other than me and Messiah being part of both. So that's the only thing. We don't try to. We're not trying to do Mayhem. We're not trying to do Mayhem as of 1987 or Mayhem as of today. That's a completely different path.
Well, it sounds totally original and distinct from that, so it's obvious that you guys aren't trying to just, rehash the past or whatever, So you went into the studio for Folly Grander, which is the first Order album, and the last time you were probably in the studio, I imagine, was for Death Crush 30 years ago?
In metal sense, yes.
Do you have any interesting stories or things that you notice about how that changed from 30 years ago?
Oh, how much time do we have?
As long as you want.
As long as I want. Well, that's luxury. It is two different worlds, actually. And I'm not sure if people are interested, and if I talk too much about it, you just cut off the pieces that aren't. But the point, the difference between before and today is obviously money, because in the 80s, trying to get hold of a studio time was almost impossible for young bands, because it cost just too much. That was a main concern about recording things in that period of time for bands like Mayhem. How we could afford the basic standard recording equipment, right? So when we recorded Pure Fucking Armageddon, which was just this tape, that was not a coincidence. If we had the times as we have today, we would have recorded that one in studio as well. Probably done Goal and the other stuff that we released on cassette tapes back then in studio as well. So that's the main difference. It's just the money thing. Now nothing costs. You can go into a studio because the studio is in your rehearsal room, right? To buy a microphone with a decent recording quality is cheap. It's not for free, but it's cheap, right? everyone who has a laptop or a Mac can set up their studio with millions of tracks and with synths and disorders and whatever you need. You have it on your fingertips, and you pay probably a couple of $100 for it, right? And you're a pro. To have the same kind of equipment in the 80s, you need $1 million, right? So it's just completely two different worlds. So, and of course you have the other differences, which are more practical things, but that comes from that, because when we did Death Crush, to talk about Death Crush, we rehearsed it just like, so many times to be absolutely sure that when we went into the studio, we wouldn't spend time trying to fix things, right? It was just a matter of recording it as well as we could. And that's how we did it back then. Today, you just go into studio and you stay there, right? Yeah. And it doesn't cost you much, and you even make stuff up in the studio because you can. You're acting like Rolling Stones, even though you're just this garage band, right? So back in the 80s, only Rolling Stones and their kind had that luxury, right?
Yeah, back when Depeche Mode would live in like a Italian villa making an album together.
Absolutely. So. And I'm sure that was nice, and they even do it today, but not for the sake of, now everyone can do it, and you can bring your studio everywhere. And that's what we do. Back in the 80s, when we were recording things in a rehearsal room, we had this cassette tape recorder, like this Mark radio cassette player, if you remember those. Well, you obviously don't.
That might be before my time.
That's before your time. It's antique.
I do remember floppy disks, though.
Okay, well, that's decent. Well, at the born of the floppy disk, the small ones, I bet you don't remember the big ones. We had, cassette tape radios, right? You had radio, and you could play cassettes on it, and that's the equipment every kid had, right? Because it was affordable. It was Japanese, and we used those small lo-fi equipment to record the rehearsal. And we put these cassette tapes in, and the longer they were, the better, right? Because we played a lot. And after the rehearsal, you go through the material, right, to see if there's anything there, because you're jamming and you're trying stuff, and it's when you make music, it's not that everything is ready in your head. You need to perform, you need to do the task together with the other guys in the band to see how things turn out, how will Necro react to this way of drumming or that way of drumming, and vice versa. So you need to listen into the tapes. Today, that's much more easy, right? You have actually visual contact to the things you play, and you can just, everything you do, you can record, and you immediately get access to it, and you can try to manipulate it. You can actually put together, you clip parts of the song that you just jammed and put it together and see, this might work. If we make this together with that one, how does that sound? So you have a totally different dynamics when you rehearse now. So it is two different worlds, and I'm glad it's gone this way, right? I need to say that, because of course the result is that there's probably too much music out there, but how can it be too much music? It just makes it difficult to find things that you really, really like, because there's too much noise out there. But I prefer too much from what we had back then, which were too little.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that it's easier now, is because whenever I read like black metal books or whatever, and they talk about how they used to do tape trading, and I was in diapers when people were tape trading. So the concept of there's a guy in Lillehammer who has a band, and obviously you could travel there or whatever, but you'd trade tapes through the mail instead of like emailing MP3 files. Is just hilarious to me, right?
Yeah, but that's what we did. And we found each other in fan signs and underground magazines, which also were distributed by friends and traded. And we had some contact on phone, but phone you couldn't. You know, if we were to do this conversation in '85, for instance, over phone between Norway and Canada. You live in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the cost would be $2 a minute.
Too much.
Yeah, $2 a minute. I'm not kidding. So it wouldn't be possible. So it was letters, stamps, and we shipped money in the letters to buy stuff because some people needed money. If we shipped over a videotape, a VHS tape, we asked them to return it with their info, so use the same tape to send something back. So that's how we did it, and it sounds like antique, and it sounds maybe romantic for some, but it's just that's how we did it.
It's
right?
just the way it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
You guys played at the Infernal Festival recently, and I want to mention that because the full set's on YouTube, and everybody should watch it. I quite enjoyed it. Then yourself and Messiah played with Mayhem for a couple old songs, because they're obviously playing, I imagine, later. They're playing after you guys, and
yeah, we played the same night.
Yeah, and like, how did that come about? You just saw each other in the room and went, "Hey, we should play some songs." I imagine you might have rehearsed before.
Yeah, we did. So sorry, guys. It wasn't that spontaneous. No,
it was too good for you to have just been spontaneous.
Thank you. Well, it was Jörn Necro who called, and no, actually it wasn't. It was Hellhammer Jan Axel who sent me a Facebook message actually. Here we go from exchanging mail and letters to Facebook message, and just asked me if I could be interested in doing a song or two on his set. So, and I said, yeah, why not? Would be fun. So, and we met the week before a couple of times just to run through it, and it was great fun. It was. Yeah, it was great fun.
And since that, well, I mean, not necessarily since that, but before that, you've been doing a lot of noise music projects. I imagine the earliest was the Lego. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the actual name. But with Euronymous, you did Lego.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually, I don't know if you've seen that video on YouTube, but there's a 1986 concert. The first time you ever played violin, and it was on stage. It was in that video.
You think it won't happen, you think it will stay there, but it doesn't, right? The internet came. No, it was really a great concert, actually. I love that concert. We actually called the whole concert the concert around a fly's death.
Yeah.
And I had great fun with it. And that's connected to a side of me where, well, obviously, if you go into the more the beat music, it ends up in heavy metal, black metal, death metal, whatever. What have you? That's what I like to play. But I also have this other side, which is I like extreme or border-like genres or expressions. So, and experimental, people often call it that, and of course it is. But I find you can be experimental and do pop music. It's not that. It's just that I like to go into the borderline of things and see what happens. And that's what we did with the Lego.
Well, I would say like Depeche Mode's very poppy, but at the time, all they were doing was experimental with the sampling and everything. So
exactly, a very good example, that one. Yeah.
I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there was a noise project you did where it was you and a couple other people, and you're in a big empty building.
That's true. Yeah. That is. Yeah, I remember it, and it's also out there on YouTube now. It's called Against the Grain, and that's unfortunate because that's the old punk sentence, so the whole internet is spread with that word. It's not easy to find.
I actually couldn't find it because I used to listen to it quite a bit, and then when we're going to do this podcast, I wanted to find it, and I couldn't even find it typing in Manheim or anything like that. So
no, okay. I'll send you. You can put the link in your podcast or whatever, so people can find it. So I'll ship it over to you. I am actually quite proud of that project because it's so well put together. There's a lot of people involved, and I'm doing the drumming there. But we put ourselves into this old silo in the town of Bergen, which a few of the listeners probably know of, and the idea from the creative people behind it, because I wasn't the original idea here, was to put a lot of expression in the cellar of this silo and combine the different musical expressions with light effects, or just go around with light casting equipment and film it and see what you can do with architecture and music. And I just love things like that, and it turned out really, really well. And it's I don't know, it's an improvisation. No, yeah, improvise, right?
Yep.
It's not. It's just talk around the concept and then you start, and this is the result, and it's really, really cool.
Is that how you do a lot of your noise music? Like, there's on YouTube you can find, and I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation, but Kjartanistan.
Yeah. Kjartanistan. No, it's yeah. That's the same. I met Slettemark, which is his name, in Stockholm, and he was doing his performance art. He was. I'm sorry to say, he passed away a few years ago. But he did his performance there in Stockholm at some sort of event I was at for some reason, and I really liked what he did. He dressed up and he blessed the audience, and it was kind of an obscure performance, and it fell to my liking. So afterwards, I asked him if he was interested in trying to do something with noise music and see if we can do something about his idea around masking people. And the original idea then was to mask the public, the audience, while we who performed weren't masked, and sort of set the audience to bring the anonymity to the audience, so they feel freer and maybe could interact with us while we were doing this shamanic-like pulse noise, right? So I called my friend Lasse Marhaug, which is brilliant within the genre noise, and asked him if he were interested in doing this, and he immediately said yes. So there we had a project. And it turned out that this festival in Bergen, great city, which is a big festival for contemporary music and classical music, they wanted us on stage. So we set it up and put ourselves in the middle of the audience. And Kjartan, which is a really fun guy, he dressed up and he used plants and he blessed the audience, and not everyone wanted to put a mask on. People are strange like that, but some did, and I talked to a few who were in the audience that night, and they felt it. They felt this pulse. They felt that they were actually going into some sort of, not the religious experience, that would be to take it too far, but they felt dragged into the pulse. And I really would like to do that again, but unfortunately, Kjartan died, so we left it there. But that was great fun.
And I find it interesting that a lot of people who are into metal either like noise music or they hate it. So if you were to give like a Merzbow album to somebody who likes metal, they either love it or hate it. you played on Death Crush, and I was a big fan of that, and I'm a big fan of Order. But probably my favorite music that you've done is some of your noise projects, and I'm just wondering, why do you think it either gets a really strong reaction from metal people?
I think you get a strong reaction from metal people when you talk of any genre they don't like.
Yeah, that's true
too. Well, first I must say that the metal audience is a culture. It connects people, right? So it's very it's important for people's identity, right? So I think that is part of the explanation. But noise is probably, I'm probably going to offend people here now, but that's how it is. It's probably difficult to go into the state of mind that you need to be in to listen to it. And when you take away all the structure from the extreme, I think for a lot of metal fans, that is dismantling what they like about the extreme. They like the structure which puts all this noise and all this aggression into some sort of system and repetitiveness and what have you. And that's what they like. That's why we bang our heads. That's why we feel powerful when we hear, great songs. And when you take that away, it gets into chaos. And because you like extreme, and because you like the noise, but you didn't like it in the structure, you probably feel it's been destroyed, and that's why you hate it. So I think you need to be free to listen to noise. You need to be open, of course, but also free from structure. You need to really be able to go, or willing to go into that sphere, if you can call it that, which is just the chaos in sound and expression.
And I have a last question that will go back to the 90s, but before that I just want to ask you, is there any future plans for Order and for your noise work?
Oh yeah, I don't know what, but well, Order, first of all, we put out the Full Grandeur, but that's the demo cassette, and we actually put it out as a cassette because we wanted to have that reference to the past, right? So I've even seen people post pictures of getting a Hello Kitty cassette player for kids to be able to play the tape, because they don't have, they don't own cassette players. So it is out there now just for a demo, and the people who buy it, they help us with the financing of a full release, which will come. So we're right now working on at least 5 new songs, which will be put together with the songs that's already there on the cassette. So that's the number one plan. And we're going to do some concerts. We're going to do one more in Oslo this autumn, but we haven't decided where to play next year. But we'll probably show up some places in Europe at least, and that's the plan with Order. And we'll just take it from there. If people like what we do, we certainly like what we do. So who knows? And the fun thing about Order is that we are doing a show together with O.R.T, which is a very good band from Norway, who are doing the more classical black metal genre. And I really I can recommend them if you're into the black metal thing. So it's kind of the old and the new who plays a concert. I think we have something to offer. Regarding the noise,
is a lot of that just more spontaneous than?
It's more project-based, right? So there's a lot of projects that people are talking about, and I think the height of the noise genre is probably passed, so there's less of it maybe, but there are a few who really keeps things going. And I talked to Lasse Marhag, which I mentioned earlier, and he wants me to be a part of one of his next projects. I don't know when that happens, but it there's going to be a release, so I probably do that. I'm more than willing. So if he's if he calls me, I'll be there. So it's more project based. It's not spontaneous. It's just that you talk about it and you end up doing it. So, but when or where, well, that's more opportunistic, I guess.
It's funny that you say that the peak of noise might have happened, because when you think of noise and black metal and stuff, it's kind of like, what would the next thing be? Where else can you go after that?
Yeah, what do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard the Silent Hill soundtracks, but there's some noise stuff with a lot of industrial and then like a strong melody. So there's some, I haven't heard any other bands that actually sound quite like the Silent Hill soundtracks. So if that direction could be kind of expanded, I think there might be something there.
Yeah, I'll listen into that, because the only thing I do know is that there's going to be a lot of music being made in the future, and I think what always comes after a period of time is fusion, right? I think the 90s were a great period in the musical history, because there were so many genres who met and blended, and I think we're probably going into that phase. We just need to have a lot of bad hip hop before we can get there, right? That's just how life is. I think the interesting music is when musicians who like different things meet and try to make something out of their differences. So regarding the extreme, I think we will see things that are, I think we will have a lot of more noise effects and not just micro effects or dubs. I think we will have really, really big noise constructions together with melody, as you say. Whether or not that will be a good thing, or I wouldn't say. I probably wouldn't like too much melody. But then again, I'm a part of another tradition. I'm part of the history that something that was. So I will deliver tastes of the past when I do things, and the new wine will come up with the new stuff. And I'm an optimist. It's going to be wonderful times, but there are going to be periods which aren't that wonderful. So that's how it is. And maybe the old and the new meet and bring something good out of it.
I've tried to avoid asking too many Mayhem specific questions, just because you've done Mayhem documentaries and interviews. You've kind of already done that, and I'm much more interested in O.R.T and your noise projects. But I was watching one Mayhem documentary, and you joked with the interviewer that hey, do you want to buy my original pressing of the first Burzum album? And then you said that you thought it was, I believe, I may be misquoting you, but I believe the word you said was shite, is how you described it. I thought that was very entertaining. And there was another story of the bass player from Emperor, when they're doing their first album, said that they're in the studio doing Indian Night Side Eclipse, and Varg Vikernes came in the studio wearing chainmail, eating an ice cream cone, and just sat on the couch and hung out for the... Instead of asking you about Mayhem, ask you about a couple other musicians from the 80s and the 90s that were in the scene, just in case you have any interesting stories or remarks about them.
I probably don't, but try. Yeah.
Okay. Christopher Rigg from Ulva, if I got that one right.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
Have you That's about it? Have you checked out any of their they've done some noise stuff after black metal.
Yeah, they quite early changed, right?
Yeah. I think it was like 97 or something they changed.
Yes. I love almost everything they've done.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
I don't know him very well. We met a few times, and we had our kids went to the same school, so that's something. Maybe some funny trivia where he and I are guiding our small kids to the school. It's a picture, but we're
Go
human,
to the,
right?
The parent-teacher night, and you see Christopher Rigg hanging out on the other side.
Yeah, that's how it is. So, but I love what they've done and what they still do. They still do music, and I find them very interesting. Just because they're doing their stuff, they're willing to follow what they have within, and probably that's part of my story as well. I'm not hung up on doing this certain band or this certain thing. I do what I feel from within, and that's how I think most of the people from the black metal scene who made music actually did. And Ulfur ended up going into a totally different road, and that's cool.
Next, I guess, would be Emperor guys, so Eisen, Faust, and then also, I don't know if you ever heard Ildjarn, but he was the bass player of Emperor back in the day, and he has some interesting stuff, I think.
Well, I didn't really know them back then, so I don't have much to talk. You must remember that Mayhem was really early.
Yeah. Yeah.
and we were kind of with this first wave of bands who brought inspiration from bands like Hellhammer and Celtic Frost and brought it into our expression. So I really don't know these guys.
Oh, okay. I figured it might as well be a shot. I find it very interesting to see what that ice cream story just cracks me up. So just stuff like that. Might as well ask, right?
Yeah, well, ask away. It's I don't know. It's kind of mythical period, I guess.
Yeah.
The period, and people like to know. They can't get enough information, and that's probably why these small stories have some value. But we were, normal people. We just had this kind of unusual habit and unusual expression. some
extreme expression.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Fenris and Nocturnal Culto from Darkthrone.
Fenris is a fun guy. And what I like about what they do is the humor, right?
Yeah, lots of humor.
So yeah, and I can recognize that from the time in Mayhem as well. It was a lot of laughter. People probably don't know that, but we had great fun, and we had even references to the fun on our releases, like the Frank the Cow and things like that, which were internal humor, and you need to know us, and you need to know all the parties and all the comments and everything. It's like it was a very tight bunch of people that met together. Remember talked about this Lego concept, the Death of the Fly.
Yeah,
that's actually Italian's idea. If you heard of him.
Yeah, I think it was Slayer magazine.
Yeah, that's him, and he was hanging a lot around us, and we had. I think we were at Necro's place, and sorry to say we were not sober, and he was incredibly drunk. He was really passed out, and was sitting in this chair. We still had his spear, I think, but he was out, and Euronymous, Øystein, and I were discussing this project, and we were building this huge project that we were going to do, which ended up to being this concert. And we had these ideas and how it was going to start somewhere and how it should build up and everything. And we were really into it, and we wrote it all down, and we didn't write it in notes. We wrote it in movements, right? We made symbols and stuff to make, to understand how we were going to build this. And when we come to some part, I don't remember exactly, of course, it's a long time ago, and I was like, We should give it a name, and Euronymous was into this classical thing, so he was like opus dit and opus that, and I was like, well, it's fun, but it's kind of then we need to structure it like that. And suddenly Metallion just woke up, and it was, like people can do when everyone just looks at you and say, what happened? And then he just said, a fly's death, and he fell asleep again. So that's how that came up. So
well, I just like the humor of some of the old black metal stuff like Mayhem is when I was getting into black metal and I saw Mayhem, and it was like, oh, it's super dark and evil and blah blah, and eventually on the internet I saw it was either pure fucking Armageddon or Death Crush, but there was an advertisement, and it was a picture of Necro Butcher playing the piano, and it had a picture of Garfield in the corner.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And at that point, I was like, oh, they're kind of like Darkthrone. They understand the sarcasm, and they put that in there. That was pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, that's precise. It is a sarcasm in everything, and it is a comment, of course, on top of everything. And actually, that picture has made many people believe that Jörn plays the piano. He doesn't, and but it is the piano that I played the weird Manheim piece on.
I was just gonna. Yeah. So that's the end of my questions there. If anybody wants to check out Order, you can go to www.orderofficial.com. They have Facebook and stuff that you can follow. So do you have any last words or like any bands that you're currently listening to that you want to recommend or anything like that?
Oh, I listen to a lot of things. I can send you off some links if you want to put it in. Now, last words in an interview like this must be a thank you to all the people who really stay there and listen to what we do. I've been doing this for a lot of years now, so it's great.
You've literally hit the next generation, because I am the next generation, so that says a lot about your work.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it, and I want people to know that everyone I know from the genre, from the old times, really respect the audience. We really do.
Well, thank you very much for being on my podcast. This was a dream come true, actually, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the third episode of the Connorcast. If you like the music in the background, that's my music, so go to www.connorortlinning.com, check it out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Connor O.R.T. You can find Connor O.R.T. Linning on Facebook and on Tumblr, and you can look all that stuff up. If you want to look up Manheim, it's Manheim. You can find him on Twitter and Facebook. Be sure to check out Order's album, Folly Grander. It's awesome. Thanks again to Manheim for being on the podcast, and I'm going to close this podcast with a track from Order.